Can you all? Okay, let me hit, got it. Okay, wonderful. Welcome to our presentation this evening and on getting your bounce back. I'm really grateful for each and every one of you for being here. I really wish we were live. It would have been much nicer to see your beautiful faces and connect with your energy. But nevertheless, that's why we have technology, right? So your being here is evidence that some of you want your bounce back for 2022 and you want to bring a little bit more thrive into your life is what I'm assuming. So thank you to you, the Town Club, for hosting me, and also a special thank you to both Lori and Sarah for bringing me in. I appreciate that very much. I'll give you a short little introduction to me. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let me see here, just bear with me. And just before I get into this, I do want to say, feel free to use the chat on the side. I won't be looking at it while I'm doing my presentation, but maybe someone can just keep an eye on it if you have any questions or comments that might come up. I'm hoping to take questions at the end if you do have any, or any comments or reflections or anything like that. Anything that comes up, just let me know. So can you see the screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Okay, fantastic. So let me just open this up here. And here we go. So tonight's presentation is getting your bounce back. And I just wanted to introduce myself and just let you know a little bit more about me. So some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Yvette Desai. I'm an Ayurvedic and healthy habits coach. I'm a yoga instructor and also an author of an international best-selling book on Amazon, which is called Relaunch Your Life Force. And this is a book about fighting inflammation, fighting stress, and using holistic methods to not only reduce stress, but also to lose weight and reclaim your health. And so I'd like to just get a show of hands here of who would like to get their bounce back. I can see all of you here. Okay, so I want to know what that actually means to you. Does that mean getting energy back? Does that mean relieving yourself of aches and pains? Just take a few moments here and just think about how you want to feel in your body. Maybe 6 months, 12 months from now, how would you like to feel?
I think it's definitely energy and excitement about life. I mean, it's been so hard to get excited about doing things the past couple of years, you know, getting excited about going on a trip or getting together with friends or, you know, just having things to look forward to.
Yeah, that's right, right? Especially in these past 2 years, we've had a lot of stress, a lot of sickness, a lot of distance from friends and families. We haven't really been able to connect our energy in the same way. So that affects us internally, right? How about anyone else? Anyone else want to venture forth and share?
I want to say the same thing, that I have no energy for anything.
Okay.
And especially all of those things that you look forward to, you worry that you might be sick, that you might get somebody sick, that you meet people. And so all the pleasure is taken out of life for right now.
Yeah, it's tough, right? There's like, it really sucks it out of you sometimes, right? Yeah, that's right. Anyone else want to add anything before we move on?
I have to, it's like just the fatigue part and balancing, because probably you, I don't know if you can see, like I've got my work computer, like the work never ends. There's no end to the workday anymore. So it's really hard to, like, between that and the kids' school and you know, stuff, trying to juggle all this kind of stuff is very challenging, and that's I think like just really has sucked the life out of at least me. I feel like I've aged a lot in the last 2 years.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Yeah, it's right. It's like there's no boundaries, right? Because we are spending more time at home. There isn't a definition between work and play and going to school and being at home and being able to be in our space in a comfortable and relaxing way. So yes, that's true. So, you know, we can blame part of this on COVID. Some of us tend to blame some of this a little bit on age. But I would say that, you know, associating this bounce back with getting older and some of these things, as far as I'm concerned, some of this can be a dangerous association. The link I see here with really not having your bounce back with really around chronic inflammation in the body. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, and I'll get into that a little bit, that's also known as AMA, AMA, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But really today, what I want to focus on is what really is at stake when you don't have your bounce back, right? When you don't, I want to give you a better understanding of how to improve that bounce back, right? Using the 10 habits of Ayurveda. And don't worry if you don't understand Ayurveda, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding, hopefully by the end of this talk. And just for a little bit of background, Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga. It's an Eastern healing modality that has been around for about over 5,000 years. And these habits that I refer to have been used by yogis and people who believe in Ayurveda for over thousands of years. And the thing I want you to think about is that, whether or not it's challenging or stressful events, a strenuous exercise, a workout, sickness, a work project, any kind of recovery in general, or even COVID. If any of you have had COVID, which I think many of us have had COVID, I haven't had COVID, but I know many people who've had COVID, there can be a recovery period if you have extended or more inflammation in your body. And sometimes there's even long haul effects, right? And often there is this assumption, right, that, there's not a lot that we can do to affect some of these symptoms of chronic inflammation. And I will talk to chronic inflammation in a moment. Things like aches and pains in your body, the fatigue that you talk about, the blurring of boundaries, the loss of memory. When in fact, there truly is. There are many studies linked to chronic inflammation and some of these symptoms that I'm going to share with you, and that we can, in about 95% of cases, influence the expression of our genes. And so I want to move on to inflammation here a little bit. I want to read to you my definition of inflammation from my book. So I have mentioned the word inflammation a few times. You might be asking, what is inflammation? It is an immune response by the body. Sometimes this is good. It can be recognized as redness, heat, swelling, and pain. It's a natural healing response to bringing nourishment to an injury or to an infection. For example, if you bump your head, the tissues need protection and therefore will swell just to protect and help heal. But the problem arises when inflammation in one place causes inflammation in another. And this can happen because our body is unable to eliminate the substances in our body that are actually causing inflammation. So this can be toxins, chemicals we breathe, things we put on our skin, the food that we ingest. And I'm going to talk a little bit to that. And so there are all these things that we're bringing into our body. Maybe it's too much food, too many toxins, but it's not only the physical aspect of that. It's also what's coming into our mind, what's coming into our eyes, what's coming into our ears. And when too much is coming into our body, it can't be digested. Our cells cannot release it because they're working overtime, right? And so what's happening is it's not really that they can't digest it, it's just that there's too much coming in, too much social media, too much news, too much stress, too much Netflix, too much loud music, right? Too much food, too much of the wrong food, too much information and too much noise. And I always like to refer to this experience of going, I have 3 daughters. Whenever we go shopping, which I am not a shopper, I do not love to shop, although my girls love to shop. But I know when I go into the mall and you have all these bright lights, right? You have, all this loud music when you go into these stores, and then it's like one after the other. And by the end, I'm like physically exhausted. I'm overwhelmed and I get irritable, right? And I'm like, I don't want this anymore. We got to go. Shopping is done. And so that is what I feel. And those are emotions around what causes inflammation in your body. So some of these can be, more negative emotions, right? Around fear, around overwhelm, irritability, and even depression. And just think about this now. Do you tend to go in any of these directions? I'm going to pull up another slide now for you to see. This is around the Ayurvedic energies, and not that you need to understand these energies, but what I want you to do is use this as a reference point, right? So you can ask yourself, do I chronically have any of these emotional patterns? And if so, just get curious which one is for you. And maybe it could be even a couple of them. So in Ayurveda, there are these energies that reside within our body. They reside within nature. They reside within the day, within the seasons, and also within the time of life, right? And so if we're looking at the energy of Vata, for example, you see the arrows going in all different directions. So Vata, examples of people that might have a lot of Vata or imbalances in Vata energy are people that have that shiny object syndrome, that they can't finish anything. They're moving from one thing to the other, and then they might end up, if they're feeling very imbalanced, feeling more anxious, more fearful, and maybe more overwhelmed. So for me, I tend to feel a little bit more overwhelmed, and then I sometimes go into irritability because my imbalances tend to be in Vata and Pitta. So if we look at Pitta, for example, you see that energy is moving up. So someone who's very driven, maybe you have a tendency towards like workaholism, for example. So that if you're not moving and you're not balanced, rather, then you might have a tendency to be more irritable or maybe doing things more out of fear. Right? And then we look at the Kapha energy, the blue energy here. The energy is going down. This is more the energy of being in your body. And so what you might tend to go towards if you're feeling imbalanced or emotionally inflamed is more complacency, feeling stuck, depressed, fatigued, not wanting to do anything, right? So do any of you relate to any of this? Yeah? You want to just speak up and tell me which ones you relate to? You can just say irritability, fear, overwhelm, whatever. I can't hear you, Becky. I think you need
Sorry.
to unmute.
Yep, I think, yep,
That's okay.
I did. I thought I did. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think for me, it's at least the Pitta and the Kapha, those two, I see sort of hanging out together in my realm a little bit.
Okay, great. Yeah. So maybe, you know, a little bit of like irritability or just feeling stuck in what you're doing. Is that kind of where you sometimes get when you
Well,
feel that
I
way?
overwork myself, get irritable, and then, you know, and then also I think that's like from that perspective, and then like sort of the complacency stuff with just sort of the life we're living now where we're stuck in the same routines every day at the desk and
Yeah.
home and that, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So, you know, so just be aware of that. Okay. Be aware of what your tendency is, right? Coming to consciousness, coming to awareness, because these things can be brought back into balance, right? And so, what we need to understand around this is that a body that has chronic inflammation or ama, right, means that there is more coming into your sphere of being, more coming into your mind, more coming into your body that can actually be digested or even processed. So not only is it social media and news and our kids wanting things from us or our partners or our family members, right? It can also be emotions that we're not giving a pause and time to reflect upon, right? Or even experiences, right? And so ultimately what that is that's really an overall disrespect to space and time, because our body and our mind really need space and time to digest. This means time off, right? Time to digest food and emotion and experiences, because we're constantly in that on mode, right? Things begin to break down, just like a machine, right? If the machine is constantly like pumping out what, you know, the things that it's pumping out, you know, it needs a break or it's going to break down. And the same thing happens with our body. For example, your digestive system, if you're experiencing bloating or constipation, right? These are signs of chronic inflammation that I'm going to share with you. And it's important for us to repair these things over time before they get worse or they break down, right? So these are the beginning symptoms of what is chronic inflammation. And it's also an emotional response to chronic inflammation. So I want to share this study with you. So this study, which was done by Roma Pawa, and it was published in the National Institute of Health. Here's the link if you want to look at it. It actually came out in 2021, and they used the US as a model for their study and their research, because the US tends to be a trendsetter in health and trends in what's going on in the world. And so I thought that this was interesting and pertinent because when we look at this, it shows the prevalence of chronic illness, which leads to chronic disease, as we know, right? So in the year 2000, about 125 million people in our population had chronic conditions. And 61 million, which was about 21% of the population then, had greater than one condition. Looking around 14 years later, 60% of the population had one chronic illness, 42% had greater than one, and 12% had greater than 5, right? That's a lot, right? And then when they looked at it worldwide in 2014, 3 out of 5 people had chronic conditions, chronic diseases, like chronic respiratory issues, for example, suffering from strokes, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular disease. And I'm sure that everyone here in this room together knows someone who is suffering from a chronic illness of some sort, right? And this doesn't happen overnight, right? So maybe you just weren't paying attention to the symptoms, to the signs, to the signals. Maybe you're just pushing through, right? Us PETA people, we tend to push through. If we need to go to the bathroom, we don't honor it, we'll just wait another hour until we need to go, right? Or, we want to get that last thing done, before we go to bed. So we're pushing through, right? Or we're living with the symptoms, right? I know that was me for a while. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, shortly, but I was living through those symptoms, pushing through just to get to the other side, right? And so why should this study grab your attention? Because I want you to know that chronic inflammation is optional, right? And chronic inflammation is projected to get worse, right? And when we look at these studies, right, we see that it's going to be getting worse over the next 30 years. And so if you're not addressing this now, then you're going to end up feeling worse, not better, right? And so you may end up with a diagnosis where you have to take medications or multiple medications, right? And so maybe ask yourself, is that what you really want? So maybe you're just curious about some of these symptoms. So I'm going to take the symptoms of chronic inflammation and put them into 2 categories, one around chronic inflammation and one around Ayurveda. So I'm going to start with the chronic inflammation ones first. And so just put a little graphic here together just to kind of give you an idea of what are some of the signs of chronic inflammation. So the first one I want to talk about is weight gain, right? So if you're carrying more on your body than it's designed to have, then you are probably suffering from inflammation in some way. So a good metric that I like to use is that if you are, when you were in high school, right? If you were at your ideal weight between the ages of 18 and 21, then this is a good weight, more or less, right? Give a few pounds here and there. But if you're older than 50, right, then you should actually be leaner than that. Being that as you age, your body becomes more efficient over time. Your body, oops, sorry, I did not mean to lose that slide. Here we go, getting ahead of ourselves. Sorry again, here we go. Your body gets leaner and more efficient as you age. And I'm not a person that gets on the scale, and I don't believe in the scales. I really feel more about how you feel in your body. Some of you have talked tonight about how you want more energy. You want to feel that little bounce, back, and that feels better in your body. You want to have more motivation to do things, right? So, you can begin to make some lifestyle changes, changing the way that you move, the way that you sleep, the way you eat differently, right? A little bit around sleep. This is a really big one, right? Chronic fatigue, insomnia, if you're tired, if you're not sleeping well, if you're consistently getting less sleep, right? Waking up in the middle of the night, interrupted sleep, not able to get up immediately in the morning and just kind of dragging yourself out of bed. These are signs of inflammation that's starting to creep up on you, right? The other one I want to mention are gastrointestinal issues, right? Bloating, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, really big ones. If you're constantly getting frequent infections or body pain, I couldn't find a picture of body pain, so I just kind of put it with the frequent infections. But joint pain, arthritis. I mean, when I was in my 40s, I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis, a thyroid condition, and I was on the verge of adrenal fatigue. And that's ultimately what brought me to what I'm doing today. And I made a lot of changes in my life because they told me that I was going to have to be on medications for the rest of my life and have surgery within 2 years. And to this day, we're about, a little over 12 years later that I have not had surgery and I'm not on medications, right? Simply by making some of these changes. And later in my life, even after I made some of these changes, I made even more changes when I became much more familiar and entrenched in the study of Ayurveda. And so it really made a difference for me. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling sad or low energy, there's some kind of inflammation going on in your body. If you are in that state of overwhelm and you're kind of feeling stuck and you don't know where to go and the next thing, and you're just feeling like in your brain, then that's a sign of overwhelm because there's too much coming in that you can't process. I also wanted to just bring the idea of self-soothing up, right? Because if you're finding yourself maybe soothing yourself with either food, maybe with wine or alcohol, or even having to use a lot of caffeine or stimulants to keep yourself moving and pushing through, these are signs that you're not honoring your body and giving your body that space and time. But I don't want you to panic. I just want you to think about how much you have, right? And that you can get your bounce back. And if you're really far down the line, it just might take a little bit longer. But you know what? We still have this life. We still have time. Have compassion and grace for yourself. I don't want you to panic. We can have some setbacks in our life, right? We've had a lot going on in the past 2 years around this work-life stress, right? But what I want you to think about is if you're not getting that bounce back when you do have these setbacks, right? If like you used to maybe when you were in your 20s or even your 30s, then examples are like maybe you go out and have a fun night with your friends and you drink a little too much and you eat a little too much. How do you feel 24 hours later or even 48 hours later? Just consider that, right? Right? What is your current level of bounce back right now? If you were to put it like on a range of like 1 to 10, 10 being really good, 1 being really bad, like if you had too many drinks the night before, can you get out of bed and do a workout and be energized? Or you're like, oh my God, I have to sleep the whole day. I just can't function, right? I mean, just think about it, right? And so Ayurveda goes a little bit deeper and differently here. So Ayurveda sees chronic inflammation at a subtler level, right? We see ama, inflammation. Ama is that which cannot be digested in the body. Actually, it sees it earlier than we do from a Western perspective. And remember, ama is that which cannot be digested. I know I keep saying that, but I want you to just really think about that, the signs of ama. So maybe you don't have any of the symptoms of chronic inflammation, but there are signs that you can look at earlier to see if that's creeping up on you, right? And so this is a way just to see that you can see if you need to make those changes in directions before it gets harder for you. So one of the things I want to start out with here is that idea of like your tongue. Ayurveda is really big on exploring your tongue and using your body. Ayurveda is the study of life, your life, right? And so if you can study your body, you have all the answers within you if you know this. So looking at your tongue in the morning, maybe you have not been scraped. Actually, do any of you scrape your tongue? You can raise your hand if any of you do. Yay. Okay, fantastic. I love it. So that's great. So if you don't have a tongue scraper, they sell them everywhere now. You can get them on Amazon and get your family's tongue scraping too. Get yourself in touch with, when you wake up in the morning, do I have a film on my tongue? Right? And you may not know if you have a film on your tongue if you're not looking at your tongue and you're just going to brush your teeth, right? So you take this tongue scraper, there's a little picture there, and you just scrape down 7 times and just see. And the 7 times is just indicative of the 7 layers of tissue that we have in our body. And you can see if you have. It also stimulates digestion and our organs of digestion as well. So, that's a way just to see what's going on. The other thing I want you to think about is, are you eating around true hunger or emotional hunger, right? Because, a lot of us have been raised, right, that okay, it's time for breakfast, it's time for lunch, it's time for dinner. But are you truly hungry in these moments? Right? I was raised in a family that I had to finish everything on my plate. It's time to eat, finish everything on your plate. You can't leave your table. And I wish I had a dog at that time so I could have snuck everything under the table, but I didn't have a dog, right? So, that leaves you with like, oh my God, I have to have this sense of feeling full. And I didn't always like what we were eating, right? But it's important to understand what real hunger is, right? And so what I'm referring to is that like chicken scratching feeling in your tummy, like I could eat anything right now, or emotional eating that, you're eating to satisfy a way that you want to feel. Maybe you want to feel, maybe you're bored and you just want something to do, right? We all do it. We're all guilty of that, right? Or maybe you have a sugar craving and you just want to satisfy that urge because that cupcake looks so good, right? Are we just working through like that whole automatic thing? Skin breakouts, that's another one, right? Skin breaks out because these toxins, they want somewhere to go. They want to relieve themselves in some way in our system. So skin breakouts, that's, an indication as well. Another one is lack of focus, right? If you're feeling a little off, you have that loss of inclination to get yourself to do some of the hard things in life, right? That foggy brain when you wake up in the morning, like, oh God, I really need a cup of coffee, right? I just can't wake up without my coffee, right? Lack of emotional energy, right? You just don't want to deal with things. So you're feeling lazy, low energy, you don't have the motivation to do the things that you used to really love, right? And then we come back to, again, the idea of constipation, hyperacidity, nausea, food sensitivities. Those are also an indication that there is ama created in our body. And ama is a pattern, right? So how many of you can just do a show of hands if you'd like, have any of these? Maybe one or more, do you think? Don't be shy. Okay, good. And maybe in the chat group, I can't see the chat right now, but maybe you just want to write what those are in the chat for later reference, just so that I can see. I'm curious about that. That would be really helpful to me. So the next question is, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, is I asked you if you have any symptoms. So the next question here is, what will happen if you don't take action around any of these symptoms? You can put it in the chat. I think I can open the chat now. Okay, great. Thank you for answering. Yeah, lack of focus, low energy. Okay. Anyone want to tell me what's going to happen if we don't take care of this? Maybe there's genetic predispositions in our family that we might have. Maybe a parent has had cancer or a heart disease or stroke. Are we heading in that same direction potentially? If you don't know, that's okay. Just think about it. And the question I want to ask you then is, so what is stopping you from taking action?
I think you just have to decide that you're ready to do something about it. Right.
Yeah.
Right now, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, it's another day.
Yeah.
I have to wake up and say, okay, I am going to make some small changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true. And I also think that, sometimes a lot of us have to get to the point of no return, or not no return, but the point where we're suffering so much, or we've been given a diagnosis and then we're ready to take action, right? I'm guilty of that, right? That's what happened to me, right? That's what really made me wake up and change, right? So I have another question that's not here on the screen, but I do have a question. So, maybe you've all heard about the anti-inflammatory lifestyle, right? I'm sure if any of you have been paying attention to health and wellness in any kind of way, which I'm sure you have, you're all intelligent women who, are well read, and you know what it means to be healthy, right? working out, eating the right foods, moving in the way that you can, trying to get sleep. And so the question is, are you doing this consistently and habitually? And if you answer this no, you're not alone. This is a growing edge for most of us. Yeah, right. It's a growing edge for most of us, and it's hard, right? And so it's automating these habits, right? Trying, yeah, we're all trying, right? We try to do the best we can. Yeah, so it's a growing edge, right? And automating these habits, we want to get some of them to the point, at least like it's brushing our teeth, right? Yeah, so that you can create a better future outcome for you and also your family, right? Because, these habits spill into our family, whether or not they're good habits or bad habits, right? They spread into our family because we are the matriarchs of our family, right? Right? We are the example to our children, right? And so I'll talk to these 10 habits shortly, but I just want to just talk a little bit about this whole idea of our culture and what we live in. We live in this culture of complacency, a culture that is really supporting chronic inflammation, right? It's like that saying around like, what is it? It's hard for a fish to know that it's swimming in the water, right? Because the habits of our culture are leading us to have chronic inflammation. It leads us to have less bounce back, right? This has a lot to do around our mind and our body, right? Stress in the mind causes chronic inflammation. These are negative stressors, things like go, 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 do, multitasking, eating on the go, having too much wine or alcohol, too much caffeine, living on fumes, right? Just burning the edge right here, eating because it's time, eating too much, eating in between meals, eating processed foods, eating too much meat, not sleeping, right? These all lead us to have less bounce back, chronic inflammation and chronic disease. But again, I just really just want to be clear that it is controllable. And we just want to be aware, right, that there are cultures that are in fact anti-inflammatory, right? Because we or and I would love to normalize these habits, right? That everyone could have. And we want habits, that are positive, that are helping us to have better outcomes. And, the fact is that a lot of our habits are really created by the groups that we're a part of, right? So you might have heard that saying, you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with and the sum of the 5 people that they spend the most time with, right? And so I know growing up for me, my family always had the habit of eating late tonight at night, right? And a lot of us have that because our kids come home late, right? But our kids are a little bit more resilient. They're younger, right? And it's hard to realize that this is leading to chronic inflammation, sleep issues, digestive issues, the coating on the tongue, being bloated, getting, making it hard to get out of bed. It's hard to know because these are normal in your household and probably normal around a lot of the people that you spend time with. And so in Ayurveda, actually eating past dark is inflammatory, right? But Ayurveda is serious. And it's serious in the sense that you can have your bounce back, but not just now, your entire life, because these rules are not made by humans. These are made by nature. Ayurveda believes that we are part of nature. We come from nature, right? And so that if we follow this rhythm and follow the energies of the day, the energies of the cycles of the seasons, then we can live in rhythm and be in balance, right? And have our bounce back, more importantly, right? And so we didn't choose these rules. These are the laws of the circadian rhythm, the laws of the universe, right? So, I like to say, like around the holidays, like, how do you have your bounce back? Like, I know for me, like, I'll have a couple drinks and I feel like the next day I get back in my routine and I'm up and going again. And I feel good, right? Because majority of the time, going for that B minus, right? That, this B minus is we're not, striving for that A plus. And I'll talk to a little bit shortly about that. But so be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with ourselves. What are we really doing, right? I want to just ask you, what are you willing to commit to? So maybe you've heard of the 15 commitments to conscious leadership, right? About taking responsibility. Do you live above the line or below the line, right? So if you live above the line, right, then I'm committing to take full responsibility for the circumstances of my life, my physical and emotional, mental and spiritual well-being. And I commit to support others to take full responsibility for their lives as well. Or are you living below the line? I commit to blaming others and myself for what is wrong in the world. I commit to being a victim, a villain, or a hero and take more or less 100% responsibility. Because right now, your body and your mind of your current habits in your life, right? But I always like to say, you change your habits, you change your life, because you and only you have the power to design your body and your life by changing your habits. I'm sure some of you have heard about Benjamin Hardy, maybe Dan Sullivan, books like The Gap in the Gain, Personality is, not permanent. Thinking about your future self and what you want that person to be, and then thinking about those habits of that future self, right? Following that, that's how you become who you desire. I'm just going to tell you just shortly a little bit about my story. As I mentioned earlier, suffered from osteoarthritis in my neck, which I still have. I have spinal myelopathy, and soon at some point in my life will have to have surgery, but I'm putting off as much as possible. But I was one of those people who was go, 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 do, do, do. My kids went in 10,000 different directions. My husband traveled all the time. I juggled a lot as I worked, and I volunteered, and I took care of my kids and tried to get on the table. But I was a caffeine and a sugar addict, right? And I wasn't taking care of myself, but I was taking care of everyone around me, not really honoring myself, right? And so I was on the verge of chronic fatigue. Like, I could not get out of bed, right? I was lucky enough to have people around me who were experienced in complementary modalities. And so in sharing this with them, they encouraged me to change a lot in my life, right? To slow down, to heal my body. Healing takes time and space, right? Giving myself that pause. I used chiropractors. I changed the way that I was eating. I changed the way that I moved. I changed the way that I spent time. I changed my calendar. I changed relationships in my life, right? But that's what brought me to become a health coach. I was in the corporate world prior to that. I worked part-time for a while, right? After having kids, right? And I decided that I wanted to shift, that if I could make these lifestyle changes for myself, that I wanted to motivate and inspire others to do the same thing, because it was possible in me. And when I became a yoga instructor and became entrenched in Ayurveda, I made even more changes that made an even greater impact in my body, because although I had some good habits that I was incorporating, I wasn't doing them in rhythm. And the rhythm is where the real change became apparent in my life. More grounded, I had more energy, I woke feeling fresh, I had more focus, I was more present and loving with the people around me. So I got off that irritability and overwhelm, right? Not to say that that still doesn't happen, but I'm more aware and I know how to come back to that. So I want to talk to just a little bit about these habits, right? So these habits, these are actually positive stressors. Well, some of the things that I've been talking about are negative stressors in your life, right? That contribute to chronic inflammation. So these are habits like early light dinner, early to bed, doing a body breath practice, eating more of a plant-based diet, self-massage, sit in silence, healthier eating guidelines, coming to your senses, which is sensory organ care, and easeful living. So there are 10 habits, right? And they all build upon each other, right? And some of you might be saying, I could never do early light dinner. My family eats dinner at 8, right? And I know that. I had kids when I really got entrenched in this that were in high school, right? And they were all very active. But what we have to think when we make these changes is that we're making them for ourselves so that we can be better, and then eventually integrate them into our family, right? So what does this mean? Like, so for, the people that are in my annual group, it takes about a year to change these patterns. These patterns run deep. So let's talk a little bit. I won't touch on all of them because I know we don't have all night, and I know that eventually you want to get to bed or do what you need to do. But we think about early light dinner, and that takes place. If we look at this Ayurvedic clock here, that's between like 5 and 7 in the evening, right? And it depends upon the season, right? Of course, because now in the winter, we expend less energy in the winter, right? It gets darker earlier, so we want to eat a little bit later and earlier. So what is an example of an early light dinner? Maybe a soup, maybe a salad, roasted vegetables, maybe a smaller portion of our dinner that the rest of our family is eating. But we want something lighter and easier for our body to digest, because as we see here in the kapha time, that energy is going down. That means our ability to digest food is much lower. So why are we all having a heavy dinner at night, right? Especially if we're eating at 8 o'clock, we want to try and make sure that we're giving space for our body to digest food. As I've said before, space and time is key. So going to bed, early to bed. What's early to bed? 9:30, 10 o'clock, right? You might say, I could never get to bed. I have to get all my stuff done before I go to bed between 11 and 12, right? Right. But you're burning the candle at both ends there, because this pizza time, right? That's when our digestive fire is at its highest. That's why you get your second wind, right? And really, you're robbing time from tomorrow today, right? By using this energy here. This is the time when your body really needs the time and space to digest and detoxify and rejuvenate your cells, not eat and focus on digesting food. That way you can sleep better, right? So starting the day right, getting up early, having hot water, eliminating your feces from the day before and all the waste from the day before, and then bringing in new breath in the morning, whether or not it's sun salutations, a quick walk around the block, doing something before breakfast to get your energy and your body moving in the morning. I love my early morning walks with my dog. Even when it's really cold, I just bundle up, but it's so refreshing and I feel alive and awake when I come back. Eating a plant-based diet doesn't mean you have to be a vegetarian at all. We just want to eat more aligned with our ecosystem, eating more organic, eating more wild plants. There's so many things in our ecosystem that are wild and deeply nutritious, more nutritious than the things that are in the supermarket or even at the local farmer's market, because those weeds run deep and grab the nutrients from the earth. Sitting in silence and self-massage, right? Sitting in silence, whether or not it's pranayama, a breath practice, right? Or maybe it's doing a meditation practice, right? Self-massage really helps to soothe the nervous system. Really key during this time of COVID. I think someone needs to mute. And it really helps us to find ourselves in our body, which, when we're stressed and overwhelmed, we're in our head. We need to be in our body more, right? Taking care of our senses as we age, right? I'll talk about the healthy eater guidelines too. As we age, we lose, our sight gets worse, right? How many of us have started using glasses as we get older, especially as we spend time at the screen, right? Or losing some of our hearing, or even our ability to taste and smell, right? But there are ways to really take care of our senses. And actually a colleague of mine just wrote me to tell me that her prescription and her contacts got better because she's been taking such good care of her eyesight, right? Just by oiling and doing some exercises, right? And healthier eating guidelines, like giving our body space, right? Time between our meals, not snacking, right? Giving ourselves that time, giving about 12 hours between dinner and breakfast in the morning. And then easeful living. So we all have stress in our life, right? Some kind of stress. And we have a choice of how we want to react to that stress, right? So just a little overview of what that means. And I want to just touch here quickly, and then I'll come to a close. I want to talk a little bit about, how we create these habits, right? Because it's all nice and easy to say that we can have these habits, right? But it's work, it takes work, right? And a lot of the patterns that we have that currently exist, run deep, right? These patterns of eating late, right? Of using caffeine, right? Of sitting at our desks hours after hours, right? And so it takes practice, right? Just like a pianist who practices their piano, or an athlete, right? Or even a singer, right? We have to practice, right? And practice them until they're habituated. And we practice these without attachment to the results, right? So we're in the moment, so we embody them. So I like to use these concepts of Kaizen, right? This idea of making small incremental changes. And I sort of alluded to that when I was talking about early light dinner, right? Maybe just having a portion of dinner, not maybe your full size that you would have normally. Maybe moving your dinner time back 15 minutes, every few days, right? Or over a couple of weeks, right? Being kind and compassionate to yourself, because so often when we embark on a change, right, we want to go for that A plus, I got to do this right, right? And that can be so overwhelming to us. And then we come to a point where we're beginning to feel good, and then something happens and we fall off and we're like, oh, I can't do this anymore, right? So we just do it kindly to ourselves, right? Maybe we do it 3 to 5 times a week initially, and then slowly bump it up because we begin to see the changes in our body and how we feel. And then we aggregate to it a little bit more because we feel good when we do it, right? We feel it in our body. We feel those changes, right? And then I've talked a little bit about the power of the posse, or what I call a dynamic group, right? When we're in a group of people that are working together along the same habits, right? We want to be like them. We're inspired by them. We get supported by them, right? And that's exciting because we know whether or not you volunteer in a group, or volunteer for the community, for the school, or any kind of cause, the energy of being connected with a group and that transformation just feels amazing, right? Yeah. Architecting, changing your environment, planning a little bit better, habit stacking. You all have some great habits, right? So you take your good habits and you stack another one on top of it, right? So maybe you close the kitchen after dinner, and then you put a sign up that says the kitchen's closed. You've done all the dishes. Maybe just go brush your teeth, right? So your mouth just feels clear of like any aftertaste, right? So just keep stacking those good habits on top of each other, right? So let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to say here. I think that's it. So, if you are in a culture that's reinforcing these inflammatory habits, then you need to find a new culture, right? You don't have to abandon your old culture. You just want to upgrade a little, right? And, the question is here, do you really want to commit to that? Come back to your why, come back to your what. Do you really want what you say you want? I think I wrote that wrong, but do you really want to have your what, or you say what? You know what I mean? Do you really want to have what you say you want, is what I mean, right? And come back to that why and why that's so important to you. I just want to close here and just take an opportunity to invite you for a strategy session if you'd like. It's a body goals session. It's an opportunity for you to be deeply listened to, come to terms with what's needed for a potential breakthrough for you. And I have 3 spots available next week. It's a value of $150. I spend about 45 minutes with you, about an hour, just to go deep and understand what some of your issues are, to see, how I might be able to support you, or maybe not, and that's fine as well. It's just an opportunity of deep listening. So I encourage you to book that. You can take a screenshot if you're interested, or you can also go to my website. I do have my next round of habits starting in January. We start January 19th. And I have 2 spots available. So if you're interested in that, I hope that you will reach out. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for listening, for showing up in the way that you have. And I'd love to open it up for any questions that you might have.
I just want to comment that it was a really great presentation. And I recently read a book, and it was written by 2 anthropologists, and they said that people are going to go crazy very soon. There's going to be a massive amount of illness and mental illness, especially because our body is a hardware that did not change for 50,000 years. But the software that we're getting into our body from everywhere, the amount of information we have to process is so great that at some point it's just going to break. It's like getting Windows 10 uploaded in a computer that was from 1990. It's just going to crash. And that analogy really stuck to me.
Yeah.
And then also another thing that's very interesting in US, being born in a different country, the concept of snacking was really foreign to me. There was never time for snack. There could be time for tea, like around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. But when I came to this country, and then there was like snacks, and now they're back. They're everywhere now. They're now in Ukraine because
Yeah.
they took it from US and they have it. But that was one of those things, and I see mothers constantly fed their kids be quiet, and then they put cereal in their thing.
Yeah.
And so if you have something in your mouth, then you probably would be quiet. So one of the biggest thing is, how do you stop snacking in between the meals? Because a lot of the diets and a lot of the suggestions actually say that you should be snacking so you don't eat as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you need to, well, you're keeping your blood sugar level to a point, but you're not giving your digestive system a break. So, I mean, I just want to respond to your first comment around everyone breaking down. And, we're already seeing that now. You see the number of people suffering from anxiety, from depression. Finding a therapist right now is really difficult because they're so booked out, right? We see it happening in our children. There's more anxiety and depression than there ever has been, right? There's more kids on medication than there has been in many, and ever in life, I think. And to your point around this snacking, like I was born in a country where we didn't have snacking, right? I didn't grow up with snacks. I came to this country, early on, but my family and my parents didn't give us snacks, right? And then when I got into high school, more middle school, that's when it became more prevalent because I was socializing more with other kids, right? And so, yes, this whole idea of snacking. So, the way that I like to see is that when we have our meals, we're having 3 solid meals a day, especially for children, right? For adults, it's a little bit different. We don't need as much. We're not growing in that same way. And what I encourage people to do is drink hot water in between meals, warm water. Warm water, some people can't start with that. Maybe they like their cold water, but we really want to be drinking either room temperature water, warm water, hot water, right? Because it deeply hydrates the cell of our body. And we also have to take that time to pause, right? I was talking about that true hunger, or is it emotional eating? So you mentioned the mother who's giving, the snacks to that child, right? Who they're just trying to shut them up. You're already developing a pattern in your child when you're doing that. So asking, your child, are you really hungry or are you just bored? Can we do something together, right? Can we connect our energy, right? So that we begin to connect intimately. So rather than satisfying maybe boredom or a desire for love, right? Or a hug, right? We can, use that connection and say, do we really need that? And so just eating better meals, whole foods, really important, right? No processed foods, good fats, right? You all know, you're all educated women. You know what that is, right? But sometimes we get lazy, right? But we don't want to set that precedent for our children.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah. And I know it's hard. It's hard because, the mother next door is giving snacks to their kids. But, we have to realize we're also going for that B-, right? That, maybe on the weekends they have that sweet treat, right? Maybe during the week you're a little stricter, but, you want to give them some grace as well. I mean, I grew up with an eating disorder, right? And so I wanted to make sure that, I wasn't completely restrictive with my children. So I let them have access to different things just so they knew they could have it if they wanted. So they didn't have that environment of restriction. Any other questions?
You were talking about healthy eating. I recently started using butter. Is butter really bad? I grew up thinking butter is really bad, but
well, there's a couple, so I am not about good and bad. I think that there's some things that are healthier than others, right? So, if you're going to make an option for fats in your diet, and you want to see, what kind of dairy it is. Butter is dairy. So, if it's not grass-fed or pasture-raised or organic, then you might want to think twice about it. Dairy is one of those foods that can cause a lot of food sensitivities and inflammation in our body, right? I prefer to use ghee, right? Because you take out the milk solids, right? Which are prone to causing that inflammation in your body. There's also other great fats that you can use, like coconut oil, right? Another one. Olive oil is another one. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. I always wondered about ghee, what the difference was between, what ghee is. But
Yeah, so they take the butter from the cow that they've created, and they cook it. And what happens over time is that the milk solids come to the top and to the bottom, and then you separate them, and then you are left with a clear oil, which is ghee, and it also sustains higher temperatures of cooking as well. So that's another benefit of it, because butter will tend to burn, ghee will not burn because it can sustain the higher temperatures.
I just wanted to say I love this whole concept of this B- lifestyle. We actually touched on this at a book club the one night about this, because we were talking about how you were going to come and do this event, and I think Sarah and Lori had mentioned this whole concept of the B- lifestyle. So I'm just thrilled to hear you say it, because I think it's really a lovely way to approach life. I just love it. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to, like, that alone is
Aw.
life changing. So
Yeah.
but and I just want to thank you for taking the time to educate us on this topic. This is something very important, and something that a lot of us, I think as mothers and women, sometimes we tend to put, you just said, like, it's just part of being female, I think, a little more caring, nurturing, and the person you're not taking care of is numero uno. So
Yeah,
so I
right. Yeah.
just want to say thank you very much for a really lovely presentation, and some, it makes you really just pause and think.
Thank you for that, Becky. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're going for that B-, hopefully, because it's important. We have to give ourselves more grace, more compassion, right? We're always so self-critical, right? And so hard on ourselves, right? That, and we live in a Western culture that expects this A+ all the time, right? So how can we expect to live if we're always living in that ideal of perfection? It leaves us stagnant and stuck in our steps in so many ways, and gives us a feeling that we just want to give up, right? But if we're trying most of the time, then that's good enough, right? Because eventually you're going to get there. So it was my honor to be here, and I'm very grateful to have presented to you and shared this with you.
Thank you. Are you
Thanks,
guys
Yvette.
okay if I took a screenshot of without the names on it, so I could put it on our like Instagram account to be our second post we've ever done? Like, are you guys okay? I'll put that up there.
Yes, it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh,
That's
and
fine.
I just want to say, if anyone is on the fence about booking a one-on-one with a vet, I would highly recommend it. I did that about a year ago, and I feel like it really has changed my life for the better. So take advantage of that wonderful opportunity if you're able to. So, and thank you, Yvette, for doing that.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. No, thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I'm sorry that more people didn't, log in, and that's because everybody's doing the A+ thing and taking care of everybody else and doing the dishes and homework, and they're not here with you to learn more.
Yeah, that's okay. They can see the replay, right?
We'll keep trying.
Right? And go for that B-. We get where we can, right? That's part of
Yep.
life, right? But I appreciate each and every one of you being here. Very grateful for your presence.
Yeah, because we already got a really big preview from Lori and Sarah.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
that's
speak.
great.
It's really been very impactful for both of them. So, and Sarah and also Lori, who couldn't join us, but just I appreciate you introducing us to all of this. It's really, really great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Sarah. Yeah. My A+ students now. No, I'm just
Great.
I'm joking. You know, they're great. So, but thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Have a lovely evening. Okay. All right.
Good
you
night.
too.
Bye.
Bye.